And I'll be recording this meeting, and this meeting will be shared in AUPSP groups. So today it's 8th of January 2021, and we are about to conduct the first workshop on research methodology. Can everyone hear me? If there is any voice issue, just let me do one thing so that chat is enabled. The purpose of this meeting, the purpose of these workshops is to give you an overview of research methodology and what basically research is. The idea behind these workshops is that once we are done with all of these, you will be able to do independent research. You will be able to write your own papers instead of going to other people and asking for help. So I'll be starting from very basics. If you have any questions or queries, you can email me, or you can ask the question in chat here. So I'm Dr. Ammar Anwar, and I'll be conducting this workshop today. This is basically an introduction to research methodology, and I welcome you all. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule, and we'll be starting without any further delay. So the purpose, so basically I'm a neurosurgeon currently working in Mayo Hospital, Lahore. I'm chief editor of Pakistan Journal of Surgery and Medicine with 9 publications to my name, having 6 citations and 1 in H index. The purpose of today's workshop, the purpose of today's presentation, that by the end of this presentation, all of you will be able to define and explain the concept of scientific research and concept of scientific research, how to theorize, how to make a hypothesis, and what are errors. The second, the most important is which we will be conducting is understanding the steps of conducting research. Most of the people don't even know that what research is and how to conduct that. Mudassir, I'll be making you co-host, so you can add more people as well, because I can't conduct a meeting and uh, keep allowing people here. So the third thing that we are going to discuss today is for how to formulate a research question. Research question is very, very important, because once you have formulated a research question, you can proceed with proceed with carrying out research. The fourth thing that we will be discussing is research terminologies. Most of the people are not aware are not aware about various research terminologies. The last thing that we will be discussing is steps in conducting research, and after that we will be have a live session where you can answer the questions, ask me questions, any queries if you have. So now coming to basic concepts and terminologies, the first thing that you should all know, we always conduct research to answer questions or test a hypothesis. A lot of people has asked me about the definition of research, and this is the definition of research that I could find. And this is for research is the systematic and objective analysis and recording of controlled observations that may lead to development of generalizations, principles, or theories, and resulting in prediction and possible control of events. This is basically a definition of research that you should all know about, and you should all have a very clear concept about the definition of research, because people will be asking you. Scientific research is of many types. These are 6 common types of scientific research. It can be according to data collection technique, it can be observational or experimental. Wherever you read the word observational, just understand that observational studies are those in which you are observing an effect in a population. This is the simplest definition of observational studies. And thus, according to causality relationship, it can be descriptive or analytical. I'll be describing this later. And relationship with time, it can be cross-sectional, retrospective, or prospective. These researches basically you conduct in a specified time period. The time period is defined. The next thing is where you are conducting the research. Either you are conducting it in hospital, it is clinical research, you are conducting it in a laboratory, your research laboratory, or research universities like University of Health Sciences and KU. These will be laboratory research, or you are conducting it on a group of people to see the impact. These are CAP studies, these are called social researches. The descriptive researches include surveillance studies and case series, and the analytical researches, they include observational and interventional studies. These are the six broad classifications of research that you should all be aware of. You will be able to find this presentation. I'll share the link later on in the group, and Mudassir will forward it. So just concentrate here, and if you have any queries, you can ask. Uh, just uh, just a moment. Let me see how to chat without moving disable annotation, hide video panel, live on YouTube, share some optimized for auto accept. All right. So now moving on to the next slide. The descriptive research includes for clinicians out there. This is very, very important. The thing that you need to understand. जब आप whenever you want, you come across a case and you see that the case is unique somehow, but you don't get to report it. Why? Because most of the journals in Pakistan are not publishing case reports, case series, or surveillance studies. They discourage you. So the thing is that there are many journals out there. If you come across a case and you want to report it, there are few steps that you should be aware of. All you have to do, the most common journal that there is BMJ Case Reports, one of the best journals out there that is specifically for cases. So you can report it there. I have read about I have read many case reports there, and I was amazed that those case reports never got to be published in Pakistani journals, and that is why people are not doing it. Case report is very important. It is easy to write, it is easy to publish, and all you need to know is to target a good journal. So one, I have told you about one journal, but there are many other journals that are publishing only case reports, and they don't usually charge you. Case report is when you report a single case. Case series is when you report a series of cases, for example 3 to 5 cases, a group of people who are suffering from same disease. You can report them as case series as well. And the surveillance studies are done in a group of population, in a small group, or in a large group, and this is done to see a particular disease. For example, if you want to see the effect of hepatitis C in a group of population, or if you want to see the depression in medical students whatsoever, you have to define population, you have to define disease, and that is your surveillance study. Now, moving on, there is another type of research as elaborated in the previous slide, the analytical research. The analytical research is the type of study in which you study one parameter in detail. So, analytical research can be observational or interventional. Observational studies include cohort, case control, and cross-sectional studies. So a little bit of detail about cohort studies. Cohort studies are those in which you are studying one aspect, one aspect of disease, and this can be either prospective, retrospective, or ambidirectional. Prospective cohort is that in which you are studying a disease starting from today and if moving along a specified period of time, for example 1 month, 2 month, or 3 month. That will be prospective cohort. The retrospective studies or retrospective cohort is that study in which you are studying the effect of disease. You are accessing your records, your medical records for a particular disease, and you are studying its effect over the period of time that has already elapsed. For example, you are studying hepatitis C for the last 6 months in the patients admitted in your ward. That will be retrospective cohort. Ambidirectional cohorts are those in which you are studying the effect of disease in the past, the time that has elapsed, and now you want to see what its effect is in present time and in future. So that will be ambidirectional. Case control studies are those studies in which you divide people into two groups. This is a type of observational cohort. You have to understand the type. because when you write a paper, you have to be very, very elaborate in your methodology. This thing will help you in paper write-up in your methodology. I'll be discussing the paper write-up in upcoming presentations, but this is just to give you a brief overview of what type of studies are there. So, case control studies are those in which you divide people into two groups. One are normal and one which will be control, and other which are suffering from a particular disease. The third type of study is cross-sectional study. Cross-sectional study is that type of study which is conducted here and now. For example, you want to see the effect of hepatitis C in a particular group of population over a period of 1 month. So you will start from today, and you will define the time that you will start from January 8, 2021, and you will study it till February 8, 2021. That will be 1 month population. You have to define the people admitted in your ward during this time. So this will be cross-sectional study. In a small group of population, cross-section is basically a group of population that is thought to be representative of whole population. We will be discussing the different types of population and different terminologies in upcoming slides. The interventional studies can be either quasi-experimental or clinical trials. So quasi-experimental studies are those uh, in which you this is very, very important, the difference between quasi experimental and clinical trial. In case control studies, you do not randomize. These are just observational, but in quasi experimental studies, uh, pardon please, in quasi-experimental studies, you are unable to randomize the people. So you just assign them to different groups. This is very, very important. Please understand that quasi-experimental studies cannot be randomized. You are just assigning them to group A and group B. This is the type of randomization. This is the type of study most of your synopses are based upon. In clinical trial, you randomize the people into two groups and you do proper randomization. The randomization, I'll be discussing that later on. But and clinical trials are registered with clinical trial registry. Quasi experimental studies are not registered. Please understand that quasi experimental is the type of study most commonly used in your synopses. So you have to understand the concept of quasi experimental. If you have any issue, you can PM me, please. And I would love to hear from you. And now moving on, this is very, very important. And I'll continue after the azan. Uh, now that Azan has ended, I'll be continuing my presentation. Steps of conducting research. This is very, very important. The thing that you need to understand why you are conducting research and what are the steps that you need to know. Research is basically, the steps should be systematic, cyclic, and should be a series of logical steps. Three words: systematic, cyclic, and series of logical steps. The first step in conducting any research, is identification of the problem. So what is the problem out there? The problem can be I have given you the option to unmute. At this point, I would love to hear from you. So please, if anyone wants to give me one kind of research problem, so please do let me know. I'm waiting to hear from you because this is going to be an interactive session. It's not going to be the one in which I'm talking and you are listening. So please, uh, ask me question here. You can anyone please give me one research problem here.
टॉपिक आपका प्रॉब्लम जैसे कि मिसाल के तौर पर
हो गया
जी हुमायूं
स्मोकिंग रिलेटेड टू साइकोलॉजिकल डिप्रेशन अमंग मेडिकल स्टूडेंट्स कुछ भी टॉपिक हो सकता
That is good. The problem, this is your topic. This is not the problem. The problem is that medical students are depressed. This is the problem. On this you have to base your for you. This is the problem that you come across as you come across many medical students who are depressed. Why? Now you have to formulate a hypothesis. This is the why. Ji Humayun, why they are depressed? Anyone, can anyone formulate a hypothesis on this? Anyone? The problem that we have identified is that medical students are depressed. Why they are depressed? This is the question, and this is on this the hypothesis should be formulated. So give me why.
Amar bhai, there is a problem in communication.
Okay, problem in communication is one thing. Very good. What's next? So there is problem in communication. There is one thing that leads to depression among medical students. What can be the other thing that causes depression among medical students? Anyone? Because I want people to interact. I want people to tell, to speak up. If you have any other hypothesis, please do, because this is how we will proceed.
Amar bhai, I think there is some problem in listening, और उसमें जो है वो काफी इंटरप्शंस आ रही हैं, तो काइंडली आप ये रिपीट कर दें. प्रॉब्लम शायद लोगों ने जो है वो सुना नहीं ठीक तरीके से.
Thank you, Mudassir, for pointing that out. At this point, this is going to be an interactive slide. On this slide, I want you all to interact with me, to tell me the first thing in conducting any research is identification of the problem. The problem that one of the problems that has been identified by Humayun Israr is there is depression among medical students. This is a problem that he has identified, and he's right. But the next thing is why medical students are depressed, and this is how you formulate a hypothesis. Now I want people to tell me that why they think that medical students are depressed.
Because
We
of
have
excessive
that excessive studies,
workload.
excessive workload. These lead the students to adopt smoking or these kinds of behavior to elevate their mood and socially. So
Okay, good one, Humayun. Yes, Dr. Wajda, we would like to hear from you. I have, please.
Student don't perform in the exams as per their expectation, or their results are not as per their own expectations, so they
Okay,
get depressed.
this is another hypothesis. The first one hypothesis was that there was a lack of communication. The second hypothesis that has come from Dr. Wajda, and thank you so very much, is uh, that they are not performing up to expectations in their exam. Yes, Dr. Ahmed Farzad, please. What's your hypothesis?
Assalamualaikum.
Why?
Assalamualaikum. Those students who are recently admitted to the medical schools, they have the depression because there is a different environment and there is a sudden abrupt change of the study pattern from that of the FSC.
Okay, this is a third hypothesis. Look, we may come across, we may develop a research paper now because we have three hypotheses. So the first hypothesis that we came across was that there was lack of communication. The second hypothesis was that Dr. Wajda said that there was overburden, and Dr. Ahmed Farzad has said that. Dr. Farzad, can you please repeat yours?
Okay, sir, I say when these medical students are admitted to the medical schools in first year or second year MBBS, there is an abrupt change of study pattern from FSC to the uh, professional education. So the coursework and those new introduction to the new subjects, along with the lack of guidance from the colleagues, that causes the depression. or stress
Excellent.
among the students?
Excellent. Thank you so much. So now we have identified the problem. The problem that we identified was depression among medical student. This was the problem. The hypotheses that we have formulated, there are three hypotheses, and now I'll request you all to develop a research plan. Now, how do you proceed with development of research plan? There will be, I will be elaborating about that in upcoming slide. But now, how do you want to proceed? So, give me, how do you want to proceed? How do you want to test your hypothesis? Because research is all about testing
So
hypothesis.
depression in medical students, is it an observation or a hypothesis?
This is a hypothesis. This is a hypothesis that we have to test whether it is true or not. So let me share my experience. Uh, uh, I had when I was a medical student, I read about a disease that was long. That read about a disease in Guyton, and that was just written under a graph. I don't even remember that. That was written that long QT interval syndrome is associated with deafness. What I is associated with congenital deafness. What I did, uh, Google was launched new in those days, and there was a search engine used to known as Ask Jeeves. I just searched on Ask Jeeves LPDS deafness and came across two syndromes. Can you everyone? I studied before developing research plan. This is the third step that we will be. I want you to concentrate, and I want you to understand me how to develop a research plan. Can everyone please mute? Can everyone please mute? We are having disturbance. Okay, so I did research and I came across syndromic deafness. That was the syndrome. So I read about it. I read a few research papers, and what I came to know that no research was done on that subject. And I did a research. I did a little bit of search in Rahimyar Khan. I am from Rahimyar Khan, and I came across a school for deaf and dumb children in my city. So I went there with ECG machine, and I started taking ECG strips of all the students because my hypothesis was that this syndrome can be found in these deaf and dumb children. I read about that syndrome in Guyton, and that was a syndrome that was long QT interval syndrome is associated with congenital deafness. That is known as Jervell-Lange-Nielsen syndrome. I did ECG of approximately 200 subjects. It costed me nothing. The ECG machine was from one of the hospitals, and I acquired it on personal contacts. I did ECG of 200 subjects over a period of 1 week. After a period of 1 week, I went to library. I studied how to calculate the QT interval. I was in second year MBBS back then, and I came up with a study. I published that research. That was just a hypothesis. After once you have formulated a hypothesis, the third question is developing a research plan. For development of research plan, the first thing that you need to do is to study research papers, relevant researches. So now that we have come across, we have formulated a hypothesis, we will do study on internet to see the causes of depression in medical students. And once we have done a detailed study, we develop a research question, we develop a research plan. Once the research plan is developed, we collect and analyze the data, the results are interpreted, and then we write up the research paper after conclusion. The initial conclusions are drawn upon the data that you have collected. So if you have any queries till now, please speak up.
सर आपके नेट कनेक्शन की सिग्नल स्ट्रेंथ पोअर है, बीच में जो है फ्रीक्वेंटली ब्रेक होती है आवाज करनी, अगर इसको डिस्कस कर सकते हैं तो।
देखें, मेरे पास नेट कनेक्शन का प्रॉब्लम नहीं आ रहा। मेरा नेट कनेक्शन बहुत ही इस वक्त फास्ट स्पीड पे है। ये नेट कनेक्शन का आपके एंड पे प्रॉब्लम आ रहा होगा, तो आई एम रियली सॉरी अबाउट दैट, बट मैं इसको रिपीट कर देता हूँ। द फर्स्ट step in conducting research is identifying the problem that we have identified after discussion here is that this was just a problem, and Humayun Star pointed it that there is depression among the medical students. So we formed a hypothesis. We formed three hypotheses in which Dr. Farzad, Dr. Wajda, and Dr. Humayun Star contributed. And all of those hypotheses were either because of lack of communication. The depression is because of lack of communication. This is hypothesis. The depression is because of overburden. The depression is because of lack of guidance. These are three hypotheses. Now we have to we have to develop a research plan. And for developing a research plan, we have to do complete. Oh, I'm sorry, I reconnected because I was getting complaints again and again. Anyways, I have reconnected and I think that people can hear me. And I'll share my screen from where we left off. And as you can see, that uh, uh, that first step is identifying the problem. The second step is formulating hypothesis. Once you have formulated hypothesis, next you have to do is to do a comprehensive study. You have to read the research papers. Back in the day when I wrote my first research, there weren't many research databases and it was very difficult. But right now you have a lot of research databases where you can go and find the relevant research. Now, where you can find the research, you can go to Zenodo, you can go to Google Scholar, you can go to ResearchGate, you can go to PubMed. These are four major databases where you can search, and the more you read, the better your concepts will be. Once you have formulated a hypothesis, just sit down, conduct a detailed research, and then start the process. Now, moving on to next slide. As I have told you, the first step in writing any research is problem identification. The problem, what, why you are conducting research? You are conducting research for the expansion of knowledge, and how you can, once you have identified the problem, like we have identified in the previous slide, that there was depression among the medical students. You have to read research. You can read it in PubMed, Google Scholar, and a lot of databases that are available free of cost. Now, you have to identify the phenomena that has not been closely studied. This is very important. You have to find something that has not been studied before. Research is basically, the concept about conducting research is to see what is out there but has not been seen by anyone else before. Let me give you another example. A couple of years back, we started off injectable. We started giving injections of percutaneous injections of dipomedrol for sciatic pain, and I thought that we should study this more closely and get it published, because that was never done in Pakistan, and I published a research out of that. The contradiction between two or more perspectives, this is very important. This is what journals are looking for, because paper which has contradiction or paper that has something different, that gets cited. You have to, once you are sending your for publication, you have to think from the point of journal editor what he wants. Now let me on this I'll share an experience. I got volume 1, number 2 of Pakistan Journal of Surgery and Medicine, that was never by
यार भाई एक रिक्वेस्ट है, सबको सबको म्यूट कर दें सर, 2-3 लोगों के माइक्स ऑन है जो
let me yes, you are right. Okay, I have muted everyone and I'm sorry. I hope that you can hear me. And now the thing about contradiction, the thing that you have to understand what contradiction is. Contradiction is something in your study that has never been studied before. There was hepatitis C is very, very common, and a lot has been written about it. But I recently published a study that was not mine, but was sent to my journal, that was on ACLF. The second thing that you have acute on chronic liver failure, that was studied from a new aspect. You can read that on PGSM's website. There is an, you have to always, once you are studying literature, keep pen and paper with you. Never do a literature search without pen and paper. Always note down relevant points. I usually do it on my mobile phone because that is more convenient for me, but you have to read and you have to understand what has been studied and what's the point that you are looking for. Once you have identified that point, you have got your research question. It's not that difficult. It's very, very easy. All it takes to identify research question is 1 to 2 hours. Just do database search and you will come up with your research question. Uh, this is again thing that situation or relationship that is not well understood or troubling question that has not been resolved. So you have to understand the question that has not been answered yet. Now, this is basically your research question or problem identification. Formulation of hypothesis. There are two types of hypothesis. I put up this slide just to give you an understanding, because when you are writing synopsis or when you are writing synopsis or a research paper, usually this thing is not more common in research paper. This is what UHS or K asks you. So for those who are writing synopsis, you have to concentrate on this slide. Hypothesis is, it can be defined as a claim put forward about the value of population parameter based on sampling. I'll be elaborating on population and parameter later on, but you have to understand the difference between null and alternate hypothesis. Null hypothesis is the hypothesis which implies that there is no difference between two groups. Hypothesis is usually done to study a phenomena among the groups. It is usually done in clinical trials. It is usually done in quasi-experimental studies. It is usually done in the case control studies. And hypothesis is used to compare a phenomena between two groups. So the null hypothesis means that there is no difference between two groups. I'll give you an example. You are studying two groups. One has got hepatitis C and the other one is normal. So your hypothesis will be uh, there is no difference of appetite between the two groups. This is null hypothesis. Alternate hypothesis is that alternate hypothesis is that implies that a difference exists. In alternate hypothesis, there is a difference. For example, I have given you null hypothesis that there is no difference of appetite between two groups, but in alternate hypothesis you will say that in patients with hepatitis C the appetite is reduced, and then you will test this hypothesis by your statistical analysis. Now, writing a research plan. This is basically this slide was put in for those. A lot of questions has been asked about synopsis writing. This is just an overview of synopsis writing, and this is basically for you one when you have to write up for ethical or institutional review board. Please understand one thing. As per Helsinki Declaration, any study that involved intervention or any study that involved a workup on humans requires institutional review or ethical clearance. So, ethical clearance is not required for those studies which are retrospective. This is the or for you do not require ethical review clearance for retrospective studies or for meta-analysis or for review articles. That's it. For all other kind of publications, you will be requiring institutional review board clearance. So how to write a institutional review board letter or that gets you institutional review board clearance? The first thing that you have to write is introduction. Now, that is what you have to write for institutional review board. Introduction. In the introduction section, you have to start with the problem at hand. We discussed that medical students are depressed. So you have to write the depression in medical students. You have to elaborate that why they are depressed. You have to quote the relevant literature, always focusing on the depression in medical students, because that's what we are writing on. Major theme is depression. You have to include the preliminary data. The preliminary data, you can conduct a pilot study of your own, or you can get the data from or other published literature that was published in for example, if I'm writing today, I'll include data from the literature published in 2020. Or you can quote the incidence of acts taken in result of depression. There are many, many things that you will come in news, and you can quote that. That is your preliminary data. Redundant approaches is a difficult term. Redundant approaches means plan B and C. So you have to highlight what steps you will take to acquire data, what steps you will take to ensure data collection and ensure privacy. In this step, you have to give the consent form as well. The consent form is usually in English and Urdu. You have to include that. And in that, your synopsis, or this is not basically synopsis for UHS. this, or for KEMU or other medical universities, this is your synopsis for getting institutional review board. You have to define the duration of your study. This is very, very important. You have to give them a duration, and that can be changed. Yeah, here a cup of coffee, please. And you have to elaborate on your methodology. You can write that what kind of study it will be. I have given you a brief outline of the studies in the previous slides. You have to define the population. You can say that you will you can say that this will be a cross-sectional observational study conducted for a period of 6 months among the medical students of medical college studying in A, B, and C years 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? And the expected results, our is, you will elaborate that your results will show the prevalence of depression, or your results will, you will discuss your hypothesis here. You will mention that your results will show that your hypothesis is correct or wrong, and expected outcome. This is very important because this is what gets you institutional approval. Why do you want to conduct this study? So I have been, a hand has been raised, and I'll be pausing right here. Yes, please ask your question, and please
Hello.
introduce yourself, please. Thank you.
Hello. Can you please? Hello. Can you please? Hello. Assalamualaikum, Dr. Lareb. Can you please elaborate the methodology part? I couldn't comprehend it. As in for our synopsis. Thank you.
Actually, Dr. Lareb, the synopsis writing workshop is in pipeline, and it will be conducted later on. So I'll elaborate on methodology as well, but please do attend that. Now I'm going to go into detail about the synopsis of University of Health Sciences and KEMU. What basically synopsis is. This is just a brief overview. The synopsis, your synopsis has got these parts. It starts with an project summary. Project summary is basically abstract. In your project summary, the things that you have to concentrate. First of all, you have to write about, you have to identify the problem in one line. We'll talk about depression in medical students. So you will say that the medical students, it has been seen that the medical students are depressed in after admission to medical schools. Recent studies have been conducted, and then you have to briefly elaborate on methodology that you will conduct your research like this. Moving on from the UHS basically asks about how to write synopsis. Your synopsis should have following sections: project summary, that should include keywords. Introduction. In the introduction part, you have to introduce the problem at hand. Your problem is that medical students are depressed. So in the introduction, you will say that recent studies, you will say that depression is prevalent among medical students, and due to depression, medical students have committed suicides, or medical students have left institutions, or medical students have become aggressive, or medical students are on strike. You have to conclude that in one page, in a few words. Now coming to next section, that is literature review. In literature review, you will quote the articles. You will quote the articles that study conducted by Anwar et al., study conducted by by that et al., this et al. Showed that depression prevalence was this. Medical students had this problem. Medical students had that problem. And once you have done a literature review, the next thing that you will move on to will be your objectives. The aims and objectives of your study should be to see the depression among medical students. This one line, that you want to study the depression among medical students. Next step is operational definitions. In operational definitions, you will define what things you want to study, and you will find out about that in detailed literature review, literature search. After operational definitions, you have to calculate the sample size. The sample size calculation is a bit difficult, and for that will require a separate workshop. I'll be conducting that later on, but this is just a brief overview. Write edit, and then you will write your methodology. In your methodology, you will write about how you will collect the sample size, how you calculated the sample size, how you randomize the patients into two groups, and I have already elaborated on that, especially the type quasi experimental type of studies. And after that, once you have done that, you will talk about the statistical analysis that you will use, and you will talk about, once you have done that, you will talk about randomization technique, statistical analysis, study type, sample size, and duration of study. This is all a part of your methodology. Once you have written it, the next thing is your outcome utilization. Outcome utilization is the thing that is the point E, that what your synopsis, what you want to achieve with this research, why you want to conduct this research. And you can write for this particular depression study that we are hypothesizing on, that with this depression research, with this study, we want to come up with a new type of we want to do a paradigm shift, or we want to come up with new guidelines that should include psychiatric evaluation at the time of admission. This is very, very important. This is an idea for people out there who want to work. No study has been done in this regard, and if you want to work, you can use it in your outcome measures and conduct a study. And this study will be the one that can be published in PubMed index journals, which are W category HEC. Dr. Lareb, I hope that I have answered most of your queries. Please do attend the synopsis writing workshop and upcoming workshops as well, because this is just an overview of what we will be doing in upcoming workshops. If you have any questions, you please feel free to interrupt me, and I would love to answer them. So, data collection technique. What happens when you are doing research? The You don't get appropriate data because the subjects and respondents uh, are not easy with your data connection techniques. So you have to design a questionnaire, you have to design your research instrument in such a way that is most convenient for the respondents. If you are doing a retrospective study, that is up to you. You have collected data yourself, fine. But for prospective studies, but for case control studies, for observational studies, for analytical studies, even for clinical trials, you have to design the questionnaire. Your questionnaire should be the one that is easy to fill and easy to and should not take much time, and should always include a thank you at the end. uh, I'll give a live example here. I conducted a CAPS study, and it got published in JOEM, which is 3.7 Impact Factor Journal. And we got approximately 4,000 responses to our questionnaire. The questionnaire was circulated via WhatsApp, and it required only 5 minutes to fill. Most of you might have seen that because it was circulated a couple of months back in the same groups, and it was related to personal protective equipment of COVID-19. So, what I did in the introduction section, I told the respondents that why they are filling this questionnaire. That was a very long introduction, approximately 2000 word long introduction, and it was written by me and my collaborators, Dr. Azad, Dr. Zoina, and we worked a lot on that. Once that was done, we informed the respondents. This is the next part that you have to inform. We informed the respondents that these are their rights. These were informed right at the start of questionnaire, that they can withdraw their consent at any time till it is published. They can leave at any time. They can stop us from publishing their data, and if they are uncomfortable with it, these are their rights. So we elaborated on that in the start of data collection, and then we informed them that this questionnaire will not do any physical harm and will keep their information confidential. While doing research for online questionnaires are very common these days, and people are using Jot form, Google form questionnaire. So while you are doing an online questionnaire based research, I'll be conducting a presentation on that later on, but you have to understand that you have to give a privacy policy statement. uh, the documentation for research takes a bit longer, but once this is done, you send it to journal for publication. The more documentation your research has got, the more authentic it is. You have to understand that you can find all of my researches on my ResearchGate profile. Please search for Ammar Anwar on ResearchGate, and you will find me, and you can find all of my researches there. So you will see what I have done and what I have published, and you will get an idea. The thing before moving on to result interpretation, the thing that you need to understand: if anyone tells you that research is difficult, research is impossible, it's not for you to do, let me tell you one thing: this is the easiest thing that you will do in your whole life, and this is the most rewarding thing that you will ever do. I'm repeating, research is the easiest thing to do and is the most rewarding. recently AGC has launched a few initiatives, and one of them is Best Researcher Award. And I hope that some of you will be able to score that next year, because none of us are eligible for that this year. But we have to take a start. We have to take a start at somewhere, and research is not difficult. It is very, very easy. It is very, very easy. Now, coming to result interpretation, there are three softwares for inputting the result, and what I use, I either use R or Microsoft Excel. These are very, very easy. SPSS costs $500, and you can buy that buy that pirated copy from somewhere, but it costs approximately $500. R and Microsoft Excel are free, and R requires a little bit of coding knowledge, but it's very, very user friendly once you understand how to use it. And you can do a lot of research from here. And before moving on, I'll be conducting separate workshops on how to do result interpretation, how to do these things, what kind of researches are there. This is just an introduction to research methodology. This is not a type of what type of paper you are writing. That will be part of upcoming our workshops, and I'll be giving you ideas on what you can write, what type of research papers are out there that you can write in just a matter of night. It takes one night to reply, write some. It takes only one night to write some kind of research papers, and it's very, very easy. So now coming to drawing conclusion, and the conclusion is intended to, your conclusion is very, very important. Your conclusion is the thing. Two things are very important in the research. One is the abstract, and one is the conclusion. Your conclusion helps the researcher to reader to understand that why your research should be matter to them after they have finished reading it. Please understand that your conclusion, thank you, your conclusion should be very, very elaborate. It should be very, very concise, to the point, and should be written in such a way that it gets the reader to cite you, because now is the era of citation based research. Now is not the era that you have published two research and you are done. No. Pakistan Medical Commission has changed rules. You are not aware of them, but you will be, and they will be implementing them in years to come. And if you want to be research supervisor, then you have to understand what kind of research you want to publish, what kind of citations you need to have, how many trainees you can have, because the maximum number of trainees, let me tell you one thing, the maximum number of trainees that a supervisor can have is 5, and he need to have a lot of publications and citations. That is better for debate for another time, but this is what your gets your research cited. So your conclusion should be precise. Now coming to research terminologies, a very, very important slide for new researcher. Please understand, and you, if you have any queries, you can please feel free to interrupt. And I would like to, I love it when people ask questions, because that shows that you are interacting, you are listening to me. The first thing is population. What is population? Population is the entire source from which the data are obtained. For example, if I'm conducting a research in Pakistan, so my population will be, what will be my population? Anyone? If I'm conducting a research in Pakistan, please raise your hand, and I want to know that you are with me till now. If I am conducting a research in Pakistan, what will be my population? Anyone? All right, Junaid, you are with us. Can you please answer this question? What will be my research population if I am conducting a research in Pakistan? Dr. Junaid Rashid, please answer this question. Can anyone please answer this question? If I am conducting a research in Pakistan, what will be my population? Yes, Dr. Wajda, please. Dr. Walda, please, I have seen your raised hand, and please answer, please, what's your query?
The participants from Pakistan will be the population of the study.
Yes, the participants from Pakistan will be the population of study, that will be 200 million. That population of Pakistan will be my population. Thank you, Dr. Waida. And this is the population is basically the entire source from which the data are obtained. You have to understand that. Please don't confuse these terms. These are different terms. The next thing is sample. Sample is a small group selected from certain population, and you can select your sample, which is based on certain characteristics. And the sample is thought to be representative of whole population. For example, you choose a sample of 32, you choose a sample of 50 people, and you say that this sample is representative of whole population of Pakistan. It can be done, but that sample has to be specific characteristics. So those characteristics are called as variables that your sample should have. These variables, for example, if you want to study depression, then your population should be the characteristics which are variables. If you are studying depression in medical students, then they should be, first of all, medical students. They should be studying in medical colleges. They should be studying in year 1 to 5. And you can either divide them in government medical college or private medical college. You can define further variables, for example, whether they smoke or whether they don't smoke. You can further categorize variables, whether they are married or they are unmarried. You can make further variables like their family issue or families. So, and one term that you may come across or you may use sometime, that is parameter, when the data is collected from entire population. So when we are conducting our research, you will come across parameter in large scale studies. For example, the study that is being conducted by the University of Health Sciences right now, that is the COVID-19 study, and that they may use the word parameter because they are these studies being conducted by UHS and Shaukat Khanam, and they are deriving it from the whole population. The next thing, very important, which you don't come across usually, but people may ask you in your synopsis meeting: power. What is power? Power is the probability that a test of significance will pick up upon an effect that is presence. So, test of significance, for example, power is a probability. This, what is power? Power is basically the thing. It is defined by Ballard, and it is basically the fact that your hypothesis is true. In simple words, this is the definition. And for those who are interested in research methodology, they should memorize it. Otherwise, this is just a term. Types of errors, this is very, very important, because once you are doing research, you will be asked, when you are sending research for publication in international impact factor journals, they always ask you what you have done to minimize or to stop the to minimize the errors. For that, you have to understand the type of errors. There are two types of errors: alpha error or type 1 error, which is, you may have read this in first grade, but just a revision. Rejection of null hypothesis when it is correct. Your null hypothesis, for example, is that, let's for depression that we have been discussing, in this case there is no depression among medical students. That will be null hypothesis. And alternate hypothesis in this case will be, uh, depression is prevalent among medical students in Pakistan. So if in this study, when you see that depression is prevalent and your results show that depression is prevalent, but you say that there is no depression, you will be conducting a type 1 error. Sorry, that will be type 2 error. But uh, you please understand that when you reject the null hypothesis when it is correct, it is called type 1 error. When you reject the null hypothesis, for example, null hypothesis, let's see, null hypothesis in this case is that hepatitis C causes chronic liver disease. That is null hypothesis. And alternate hypothesis is that uh, chronic liver disease is not a manifestation of hepatitis C. Just for the sake of argument, when you say that your results show that chronic liver disease is present among your subjects of hepatitis C, but you reject that and you say that chronic liver disease is not present in majority of population, that is type 1 error. that will be because you have rejected the null hypothesis when it is correct. Similarly, acceptance of null hypothesis when it is false. Acceptance of null hypothesis when it is false. And I'll say that if your null hypothesis is that depression is not prevalent among medical students, when you accept it and your results show that depression is prevalent, so this will be type 2 error. If you have any questions till now on error, you can please raise your hand and I'll answer them, because I love questions. If you have any questions till now, please do ask. Yes, Dr. Lareb, please unmute.
Sorry. Um, I'm so sorry, my internet connection got interrupted. Can you please explain that power part? The last slide, please.
All right, no issues. Uh, so now, first of all, Dr. Lareb, thank you for asking this question, and this shows that people are actually listening to me. Otherwise, I was thinking that I'm talking to computer. Power is the probability that a test of significance will pick on an effect that is present. For example, in simple words, when you are deducing, or this is your hypothesis that depression is prevalent among medical students, you do a t-test, and your t-test shows that p-value is less than 0.005. So this shows that your hypothesis has power. Your hypothesis is correct. This is the power which shows that your hypothesis is correct. Power is the probability that test will show that effect that is present. Because what is your hypothesis? Your hypothesis is basically testing the effect or testing the outcome. So when a test shows that that effect is present, this is called the power of the test. I hope that this answers your question. If not, then please raise your hand and I'll further elaborate. All right, we have discussed type of errors. Thank you, Dr. Lareb. And now I'm starting a poll, and I would love to know your feedback. Edit, edit. Okay. Excuse the interruption, please. And if you have, I would love to know how this presentation is going on till now. And if you think that it's going good, please raise a thumbs up and show your support. Thank you. You can use the thumbs up from your mobiles easily. Now coming to type of variables, this is very important, and you have to understand that there are two types of variables, categorical and numerical. Categorical variables can be nominal or ordinal. Please pardon the spelling mistake here. Nominal variables are those variables that have got names. Categorical variables are also called as dichotomous or qualitative variables, and these are those variables that have they have two types: nominal and ordinal. This is basically nominal, NOMINAL, and the nominal variables are those that have names. For example, uh, gender will be a nominal variable that has got male and female if you are inputting it as names. The ordinal variables are those that have numbers. Sorry, the ordinal the nominal variables have names. For example, the name of subject, this is a categorical, or this is a nominal variable, whereas ordinal variables are those that have values. This include the gender of subjects such as male and female. The second type of variables are numerical or quantitative. In categorical variables, all you can do is the type of test that you can apply on these variables is a part of next slide. But just to give you an overview, the numerical or quantitative variables are those that have got numbers. These can either be discrete, they can either have different values. For example, uh, up, you can say that blood pressure values are part of numerical values, and these are discrete variables. Blood pressure, one has got 120 by 80, the other has got 130 by 90. The value varies from person to person. The other can be continuous. Continuous means that if one variable has got value of 1, the next will have 2 and 3 and so on. So these is all about variable. Once again, there are two types of variables that you study. in your data. It all comes down to two things. Either it can be categorical variable or it can be a numerical variable. Now, yes, Humayun, please unmute and ask your question.
Which is the variable type in which there is some sort of natural order? I think it is ordinal variable or what?
Yes, that is the ordinal variable.
All right, and height would be continuous variable, right?
Yes, height would be continuous variable. Thank you for asking your questions. Yes, Dr. Usman, please unmute.
सर आई एम डॉक्टर उस्मान, मैं पूछना चाहता हूँ कि एक्नी डिप्रेशन एंड एंजाइटी अमंग एक्नी पेशेंट्स, उसमें सर कौन से वेरिएबल्स होंगे?
Depression and anxiety among
एक्नी पेशेंट, एक्नी वल्गैरिस।
डॉक्टर उस्मान, इस पे लिटरेचर सर्च करना पड़ेगा, फिर हम देख के इस पे करेंगे। आपका इस पे तो आप अपनी हाइपोथेसिस देखें ना कि हाइपोथेसिस आपकी है कि उस पे लिटरेचर सर्च, लेकिन एक्चुअली होता है, इफ आई रिमेंबर करेक्टली, इफ एनीवन कैन इनपुट ऑन दिस प्लीज रेज हैंड एंड आई विल अनम्यूट. Dr. Usman has asked this question. Dr. Hussain and Dr. Shami, I'm going to unmute you.
जी अस्सलाम वालेकुम कुमार भाई।
जी वालेकुम सलाम।
आवाज आ रही?
जी बिल्कुल आ रही है
जी। इन्होंने डिप्रेशन एंड एंजाइटी इन दी एक्नी वल्गैरिस पेशेंट्स बात की है।
जी बिल्कुल ये बात की है।
हाँ जी डेफिनेटली। ये पहले तो ये है कि हमारा भी माशाल्लाह बड़ा अच्छा आपका ये आप लोगों की एफर्ट है और बड़ी अच्छी। मैं इधर कंसल्टेंट प्लास्टिक सर्जन हूँ, मैं हॉस्पिटल लाहौर से इधर सुन रहा हूँ। तो ये मेरे ख्याल में ये अमार भाई आगे भी इसके ऊपर डिटेल में शायद प्रेजेंटेशंस करेंगे, लेकिन इसमें जैसे डॉक्टर साहब आपने बात की कि जो आपके वेरिएबल हैं वो बजाते खुद, जैसे एक तो आपका डिप्रेशन वेरिएबल बन जाएगा, दूसरा आपका एंजाइटी वेरिएबल बन जाएगा, फिर आपका एक्नी वल्गैरिस जो है वो बजाते खुद वेरिएबल है। इसके अलावा डेफिनेटली आप उसमें अगर, क्योंकि आपने जेंडर स्पेसिफाई नहीं किया और दोनों जेंडर रखे हैं, दोनों जेंडर वेरिएबल बनेंगे। एक एज का वेरिएबल बन जाएगा क्योंकि आपने एज भी स्पेसिफाई करनी होगी, कभी किस एज से किस एज तक। अब एज जो है वो आपका न्यूमेरिकल, वो आपका क्वांटिटेटिव वेरिएबल हो जाएगा। जेंडर आपका यस नो या मेल फीमेल जो होगा वो आपका जो है वो कैटेगोरिकल वेरिएबल बन जाएगा। अब जहां तक बात है डिप्रेशन और एंजाइटी की, तो उसके अंदर अब दो तरीके से आप कर सकते हैं। एक तो ये है कि कोई ऐसा आप सिर्फ अगर आप खाली करें फॉर एग्जांपल डिप्रेशन और एंजाइटी को यस और नो, तो उसमें मेरे ख्याल में मार भाई जिस तरह बता रहे हैं कि कैटेगोरिकल वेरिएबल आपका बन सकता है, उसके अंदर आपका जो टेस्ट है वो क्वालिटेटिव टाइप लग जाएंगे। लेकिन अगर आप कोई ऐसा क्वेश्चनर इस्तेमाल करते हैं, कोई ऐसा स्केल या ऐसा क्वेश्चनर इस्तेमाल करते हैं जिसके एंड में आपके पास न्यूमेरिकल स्कोर आए, जिस तरह आप किसी का निकालेंगे कि जी डिप्रेशन यस नो है और साथ आपने क्वेश्चनिंग वो भी रखी हुई है ऐसी, और कोई ऐसा आप क्वेश्चनर भी इस्तेमाल करते हैं वैलिडेटेड जो ऑनलाइन पढ़ा हो कि भाई डिप्रेशन का कि कितनी डिप्रेशन थी, कि उसका 7 कोई 100 में से या 10 में से कोई ऐसे न्यूमेरिकल स्कोर, तो वो स्कोर आपका क्वांटिटेटिव बन जाएगा वेरिएबल और उसके ऊपर आप क्वांटिटेटिव टेस्ट लगाएंगे। तो इस तरीके से जो आपको ऑब्जेक्टिव बन रहा है, जो आप अपना ऑब्जेक्टिव बन रहे हैं, उसके अंदर जिस तरह आगे भी ये शायद बताएंगे ऑपरेशनल डेफिनेशंस का, तो उसके अंदर आप ये आइडेंटिफाई कर लेंगे। लेकिन ये बड़े बेसिक वेरिएबल, जैसे जेंडर तकरीबन हर स्टडी में, ज्यादातर हमारे स्टडी में हम लोग इसको करते हैं, जेंडर हमारा है, एज भी स्टडीज में आ जाती है। फिर इसी तरह अब आपने ये आइडेंटिफाई किया कि भी एंजाइटी और जो डिप्रेशन है, तो अगर तो आप इसको यस नो कैटेगोरिकल वेरिएबल का करते हैं तो इस तरीके से करना पड़ेगा। और अगर आप कोई ऐसा स्केल इस्तेमाल करते हैं डिप्रेशन का जो साथ आपको कोई सेवेरिटी भी बताती है या कोई स्कोर भी देगा, कोई न्यूमेरिकल आपको कोई चीज वो देता है जिसकी मीन बेसिकली निकाल सकते हैं आप और स्टैंडर्ड डेविएशन निकाल सकते हैं, तो वो आपका क्वांटिटेटिव वेरिएबल होगा। आई होप दिस आंसर्स द क्वेश्चन। और दूसरा अमार भाई ये आई वुड आल्सो लाइक टू आस्क कि जो आपने हाउ टू आइडेंटिफाई अ प्रॉब्लम पे भी आगे इंशाल्लाह कोई रखेंगे फर्दर सेमिनार इस तरह का कि प्रॉब्लम आइडेंटिफाई कैसे करें, क्योंकि बच्चों को ये बड़ा मसला होता है कि ऑल्दो आपने माशाल्लाह स्लाइड पे अच्छा बताया, लेकिन वो जब ये बाकी भी इनको बता रहे होते हैं वर्कशॉप्स में, लेकिन प्रैक्टिकली ये बड़ा मुश्किल हो जाता है इनके लिए। अब ये पेपर बच्चे पढ़ते रहते हैं, कहते हैं सर हमें तो समझ नहीं आ रही कि भी इसमें प्रॉब्लम कैसे निकालें। तो उसमें जैसे मैं उनको टिप देता हूँ कि भाई आप कम से कम अगर कोई एक चीज पढ़नी, वैसे तो पूरा पेपर पढ़ें, लेकिन उनकी लिमिटेशंस को जरा देखा करें। अच्छे पेपर्स ने अपने सब्जेक्ट में नीचे लिमिटेशन बताई होती है कि भाई हमारे पेपर में ये लिमिटेशन थी। तो हाँ बिल्कुल, ये जो प्रॉब्लम आइडेंटिफिकेशन है कि जब आप आप रिसर्च पढ़ रहे होते हैं तो उसमें जो लिमिटेशंस कुछ स्टडीज ने दी होती हैं कि जी हमारी ये लिमिटेशन रही, और दूसरा उन्होंने नीचे रखा होता है फ्यूचर डायरेक्शन या फ्यूचर वर्क। उन्होंने नीचे एक पैराग्राफ में कोई अच्छी स्टडीज ने ये भी लिखा होता है कि जी फर्दर इस पे रिसर्च होनी चाहिए या इस चीज के ऊपर फर्दर काम होना चाहिए। तो ये जो 2-3 पैराग्राफ होते हैं, एक लिमिटेशंस का और ये जो फ्यूचर डायरेक्शन या फ्यूचर वर्क का, इसके अंदर से आपको बड़ी अच्छी वो डायरेक्शन मिल सकती है। और दूसरा, जब भी आप किसी भी बच्चे सब्जेक्ट में ये अपना ट्रेनिंग के लिए आते हैं, तो वहां पे वो बच्चे कहते हैं जैसे मेडिसिन में या सर्जरी में या किसी भी फील्ड में, तो वो कहते हैं अब सर सर्च क्या करें हम? आप डेटाबेस भी बता देते हैं जी, गूगल स्कॉलर पे जाएं, उस पे हम सर मेडिसिन लिख के बस सर्च कर दें, सर्जरी लिख के सर्च कर दें। तो मैं बच्चों से कहता हूँ कि सबसे पहले आप ये आइडेंटिफाई करें कि आपके वार्ड में कौन से मरीज सबसे ज्यादा आ रहे हैं। कम से कम कोई 200 मरीज साल में या 100-150 मरीज साल में आप उस बीमारी के उस चीज के ऊपर देख रहे हो, तो कम से कम उन उन बीमारियों को या उन पेशेंट्स को सर्च आप करना शुरू करें। तो ये जरूर इस चीज को जो है ना दरमियान में दो बातों को जरूर करें। बातें और भी हैं, वो इंशाल्लाह मार भी आपको आगे भी बताएंगे, लेकिन ये दो बड़ी पर्टिनेंट पॉइंट है कि एक तो रिसर्च पेपर पढ़ें, तो उसमें वो लिमिटेशंस और फ्यूचर डायरेक्शंस पढ़ें, और दूसरा जो आप पेशेंट पॉपुलेशन पहले आइडेंटिफाई करें कि जी कौन से ज्यादा प्रेजेंट हो रहे हैं पेशेंट, और फिर उनको आप जो है ना उन टॉपिक्स को सर्च करके और फिर सिंपल जो टॉपिक्स हों, जो सिंपल हों, इजीली डुएबल हों, ज्यादा खर्चा ना करना पड़े और ज्यादा कोई हैसल ना हो, और तो जो आपका इजीली टाइम के अंदर कंप्लीट भी हो जाए, तो वो टॉपिक्स आप जो है ना करने की कोशिश करें। थैंक यू अमार भाई, बड़ा आपने मुझे टाइम दिया। आई होप दिस आल्सो आंसर्स द क्वेश्चन और जो प्रीवियसली डॉक्टर साहब ने डिप्रेशन और एंजाइटी रिलेटेड किया था। जी कोई हो एलैबोरेशन जरूर आप बताएं। जी जज़ाकल्लाह खैर।
Thank you, Dr. Shami, for a detailed talk. First of all, I would like to say that the things that you have pointed out, I'll be talking about them in future as well. And you are absolutely right that while doing a research in good studies, actually this was a part of my next upcoming presentations. And just to give you an idea, good study always has limitations and always tell you about future directions. So I'll be discussing more about this when I do write research. If anyone else wants to elaborate on Dr. Usman's original question that what should be the hypothesis, please do. And there is a running poll about the presentation. Please do give your input. Thank you. All right, Dr. Usman, I hope that this answers your question. But if the question has remained unanswered, I'll be discussing that more in detail when I conduct a workshop on how to write a research paper, because this is just the beginning. This is just the first part of workshop. There will be a series of workshops that will be conducted on a subject. Links will be shared in AUPSP groups. And I'm really, really sorry about the short notice, but I was asked by Dr. Asad to start these workshops, and I had time today. So you will be given a notice of a few hours, and that will be upon my availability, and I'll try to make the presentation as informative as possible. And please do vote on poll so I know that what things need to improve. And if you have any suggestions, please speak up. I won't mind, because with your suggestions we improve. So now we have discussed. So now moving on, how will you do statistical representation of variables? For categorical variables, you can use numbers and percentages, and for numerical variables, this is where you apply your statistical tests. There will be a separate workshop on statistical methods, and you can use mean, standard deviation, etc. for these numerical variables. But this is just to give you a brief overview that your statistical testing is always done on your numerical data. Now there is one thing, sample size. The more sample size you have, the lesser is the margin of the error. This is one thing. The sample size is calculated based on your hypothesis. There will be a detailed workshop on sample size calculation in coming days, inshallah. But the first thing that you need to understand is that sample size calculation, there is no difficult formula. These things are out there. All you have to do is to formulate a hypothesis, see the burden of the disease. Before calculating sample size, you need to have a few things that you should have in writing. First thing is that your hypothesis. Second thing is your burden of disease. What is the burden of disease? What's its prevalence in Pakistan? What's its global prevalence? And that's it. With that, you can calculate sample size. And also, you should have an idea about what kind of research you are going to conduct. So now moving on, these are a few things that you should avoid always while conducting research. Your research should be specific. Your research should be specific, and specificity can only be obtained when you have a clear-cut hypothesis. When you have a clear-cut research problem. Poorly defined research problems lead to poor results. Your research problem should be, it all comes down to one simple question, and I'll be elaborating more on how to write a research question and how to make a research question in upcoming studies. But for today, this is how you can make identify the problem and write up a research question. These are the two slides that you should remember. These slides will be available, and I'll share the link later on. And the theoretical framework, this is basically your study, what you have done. So before conducting a research or conducting anything, you have to read the research, you have to do a thorough literature review. So once you have done a thorough literature review, and you will move on. The next thing that you are conducting, your research should have significance. It's you have to identify, you have to do a research in such a way that it has never been done before. For example, one of my seniors, chronic subdural hematoma is very common. It is one of the commonest neurosurgical procedures that we come across every day. But one of my seniors conducted a beautiful research, and it was published in Impact Factor Journal. What he wanted to compare, he wanted to compare the result of chronic subdural hematoma drains and without drains, and that was the one thing that he studied in his whole research. That was a retrospective database of all the chronic subdural hematomas that we did, and the results were very good, and research got published in a local Impact Factor Journal that was PubMed indexed. The next thing that you have to understand while conducting literature review is relationship between past research and your study. What are your results and what in the past has been done? The research that uh, the thing with our researcher is that, I'm sorry to say, most of the people that publish research, they don't want to deviate from the norms. You have to find something unique in your own research, and you have to present it, and you have to show that X, Y, and Z conducted these researches, but this thing was not studied. You have to mention it as well in your studies, and such researches have marvelous contribution to the field. This is a term, provincialism. I just added it here so that people should know it. Provincialism is basically your research should not be so narrow that it focuses on only one thing. Your research should have a wide scope. For example, for scope of research, my study that I conducted on coronavirus, it covered personal protective equipment in lower middle income countries. Lower middle income countries, it covered three aspects. That was a wide scope. So your title, your whole research, and your discussion should have a wide scope. Objectives, hypothesis, and research questions should be clear, and these are the things that you have to define before you start a research. Because if these things are not defined, the methodology will be poor. There is one more thing, that while writing a research paper, elaborate more and more on methodology. The devil lies in details. Please always get ethical certificates from your institutions, because any ethical issue, if even if pointed out later in years, can lead to retractions. And always mention limitation of your studies. This will be more elaborated while discussing how to publish. Thank you so very much for your time, patience, and being a wonderful audience. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask me, or if you have any queries, you can email to umaranur@hotmail.com, and the presentation's recording and the link of this presentation will be shared in the groups. Thank you so much. And yes, there are polls that are running. I would love to know your answers. Thank you for your answers. And if anyone has any queries, please. Or if anyone wants to comment or say something. Dr. Hassan, Dr. Mudassir has raised hand first. He'll be commenting. After that, I'll unmute you. Yes, Dr. Mudassir.
थैंक यू उमर भाई, बड़ी ज़बरदस्त प्रेजेंटेशन थी माशाल्लाह। अभी जो है वो इनिशिएट किया ये प्रोसेस, और फर्दर इंशाल्लाह इसे हम आगे बढ़ाते चले जाएंगे, और उम्मीद करता हूँ कि सबको जो है वो अच्छा लगा होगा, और सब जो है वो कमेंट भी देंगे। तो इसमें जो फर्दर हमने करने हैं रिसर्च वर्क, या जैसे भी आगे करनी है, कोलैबोरेशन करनी है, तो इसमें मैं बाकियों से भी कहूँगा कि और भी लोगों को इसमें देखें। ये वाइड फोरम है, इसमें कोई ये किसी एक बंदे के लिए नहीं है, इसमें हर कोई वेलकम है। तो आप सब आएँ, और थैंक यू उमर भाई, दैट वाज अ वेरी नाइस सेशन। थैंक यू सो मच।
जी अस्सलाम वालेकुम वंस अगेन। मार भी माशाल्लाह जी बड़ा ही अच्छी इनिशिएटिव है, और सबने बड़ा अच्छा इसके अंदर जो है वो काम कर रहे हैं। बस मेरा यही कहना है कि आगे भी जरा पार्टिसिपेशन थोड़ी रेजिडेंट्स और उनकी तरफ से थोड़ी मुझे वो लग रही कि कम है। आगे मजीद इसको मैं रेजिडेंट्स को कहूँगा कि भी आप ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा पार्टिसिपेट करें, और अपने जो टॉपिक्स हैं आगे, क्योंकि डिटेल में जब डॉक्टर हमारे करेंगे चीज़ें डिस्कस, तो काइंडली अपने जो रियल टाइम आप लोग टॉपिक्स और रिसर्च कर रहे हैं, तो उसको ज़रूर उसमें से आप हेल्प लेने के लिए तो आगे आके तो उसमें पूछें। जैसे डॉक्टर साहब ने अभी गालिबन डर्मेटोलॉजी के या कुछ से रिलेटेड उन्होंने जो एक्ने और डिप्रेशन का पूछा, ताकि आप लोगों को रियल टाइम यहाँ पे फायदा हो, और सबकी लर्निंग होती है। इसमें कोई सीनियर जूनियर का तो सिस्टम ही नहीं होता। हमारी भी, मेरी भी बड़ी लर्निंग हुई आज इधर हमारे भाई से, और ये कोई हमारा यूनिवर्सिटी की तरफ से या उस तरह का तो वो फोरम है नहीं, बिल्कुल खुले डुल्ले होके। तो आई वुड लाइक कि भी सारे ज्यादा से ज्यादा, और नेक्स्ट टाइम कोशिश करें कि मजीद अपने साथ जो ट्रेनीज और रेजिडेंट्स और लोग हैं, तो उनको भी लिंक्स ज्यादा से ज्यादा शेयर करके तो उनको भी मजीद नंबर ऑफ पार्टिसिपेंट्स जो हैं बढ़ाएं। अभी भी माशाल्लाह आज बड़े काफी पार्टिसिपेंट्स हैं हमारे यहाँ पे, और कोशिश करें जितने ज्यादा आप लोग ये हेल्प ले सकते हैं वो लें। और उसके बाद ये इंशाल्लाह हमारा सिलसिला लंबा चलता रहेगा। लेकिन आज जो यहाँ पार्टिसिपेंट्स हैं उनको मैं एक और बात भी करूंगा कि यहाँ से जो चीज आप सीख रहे हैं, वो अपने जो नए जो आने वाले जूनियर्स होंगे कल को, उन तक भी जरूर उनकी भी आप जो है हेल्प करें, सिनॉप्सिस राइटिंग में, रिसर्च राइटिंग में, चीजों में। क्योंकि ये बड़ा अनफॉर्चुनेट है कि हम लोग यहाँ पे वो रिसर्च की बात कर रहे होते हैं, बहुत कम लोग आगे जाके रिसर्च को कोई बहुत जरा फोकस करके आगे चलते हैं, और जब आप करते नहीं है तो ये हमारे भाई भी सेकंड करेंगे, वो चीजें फिर भूलना शुरू हो जाती हैं, और रिसर्च आप मेथोडोलॉजी चीजें चीजें काफी पीछे चली जाती हैं। तो ज्यादा से ज्यादा अपने जूनियर्स की तरफ को भी जो है ना वो हेल्प जरूर करें। बाकी और भी इधर सीनियर्स वगैरह हैं, तो जरूर कोई किसी को किसी किस्म की हेल्प चाहिए वो जरूर आगे आए और हेल्प ले। और ज्यादा से ज्यादा जो अपने रियल टाइम टॉपिक्स हैं वो जरूर आप जरा थोड़ा डिस्कस कर लिया करें फोरम्स पे, आप लोगों को इसका काफी फायदा हो जाएगा। वंस अगेन जी हमारे भाई जबरदस्त माशाल्लाह, बहुत अच्छी आज की जो है प्रेजेंटेशन रही। लुकिंग फॉरवर्ड टू योर नेक्स्ट फॉलोइंग प्रेजेंटेशंस एज वेल जी।
अस्सलाम वालेकुम।
जी सर, वालेकुम सलाम सर, प्लीज इंट्रोड्यूस योरसेल्फ।
जी, मेरा नाम डॉक्टर उमर इकबाल है, मैं अलाइड हॉस्पिटल में एमएस एनेस्थीसिया कर रहा हूँ। सर मेरी रिक्वेस्ट थी कि मेरे कुछ और कोलीग्स जो हैं वो ऐड होना चाह रहे थे ग्रुप में, तो मैंने वन ऑफ द एडमिन को मैसेज किया था लेकिन उन्होंने रिप्लाई नहीं किया था। और दूसरा मेरा ये सजेशन थी कि आप काइंडली अगर इसकी वीडियो हमें रिकॉर्ड कर दें, क्योंकि बहुत सारे क्वेश्चन रह जाते हैं पहले जो आप एक्सप्लेन करते हैं टर्मिनोलॉजी, क्योंकि हमारी रिसर्च से कोई बहुत ज़्यादा वाकफियत नहीं है, तो हम बाद में फिर वो चीज़ें एक दफ़ा आपसे सुनते हैं दोबारा वीडियो में, तो हम दोबारा पॉइंट आउट कर सकते हैं, आपसे पूछ सकते हैं। ये दो चीज़ें थी जो मैं नेक्स्ट जो हमारे आ रहे हैं क्लासेस होंगी उसके अंदर अगर आप ये कर दें तो बहुत बेहतर हो जाएगा हमारे लिए।
Dr. Mudassir and Dr. Hassan, thank you so much for your comments. और I would continue this, इस चीज़ को भी मज़ीद इम्प्रूव करना है। आप लोगों से एक तो जो पार्टिसिपेंट्स हैं, प्लीज़ हमारा जो रिसर्च इनिशिएटिव वाला ग्रुप है उसके अंदर आप लोग सारे के सारे इस पे क्वेश्चन करें, पूछें, सजेशंस दें ताकि नेक्स्ट हम उस लिहाज से कर सकें। प्रोग्राम आपको सारे का सारा देंगे, ये एक इनिशियल इस पे था। दूसरा, जहाँ तक ये रिकॉर्डिंग वाली बात थी, डॉक्टर साहब आप यू आर एब्सोल्युटली राइट। हम रिकॉर्डिंग, डॉक्टर उमर, रिकॉर्डिंग इंशाल्लाह इसकी जो है वो यूट्यूब पे आ जाएगी। प्रेजेंटेशन जो है इसकी रिसर्च गेट पे आ जाएगी। अगली प्रेजेंटेशन जो मैं एक देना चाह रहा हूँ वो ये कि आप लोगों को अपना रिसर्च इम्पैक्ट किस तरह बनाना है, इस पर भी बात होगी। और आई एम सीइंग अ कपल ऑफ हैंड्स, मैं यहाँ पे आप सबको भी बोलने का मौका दूंगा। तो नाउ मैं तो काफ़ी देर से बोल रहा हूँ, नाउ टाइम टू लिसन फ्रॉम यू गाइस।
Hello. So thank you so much for taking out time. It was a wonderful presentation. Sir, मेरा भी ये क्वेश्चन था कि प्लीज इनके प्रेजेंटेशंस की एक रिकॉर्डिंग होनी चाहिए जो कि यूट्यूब पे अवेलेबल हो, बिकॉज विद ड्यूटीज ऑनलाइन हर लेक्चर अटेंड करना पॉसिबल नहीं होता। सो अगर हमारे पास लाइक वीडियो यूट्यूब लिंक होगा, that will be very beneficial for us. And that was a feedback and a request.
थैंक यू सो
Thank you.
मच डॉक्टर लारेब। इस पे हम यूट्यूब पे इंशाल्लाह ये वीडियो आ जाएगी, थोड़ी देर में इसका लिंक ग्रुप पे शेयर हो जाएगा।
हाँ जी डॉक्टर उमर, बहुत अच्छी प्रेजेंटेशन थी आपकी, वेरी इंफॉर्मेटिव। और इसमें ये मैं कहना चाहूँगा कि मुश्किल है आसान है ये तो नहीं पता, वो तो सारी इंडिविजुअल हर शख्स का होता है। लेकिन आपकी प्रेजेंटेशन में ये ज़रूर है कि ये टॉपिक रूटीन में डिस्कस नहीं हो रहे होते, इसलिए भूल जाते हैं। तो बहुत ज़रूरी है कि इनका रिवीजन इस तरह से होता रहे ताकि वो कुछ चीज़ें याद रहती हैं। थैंक यू, बहुत अच्छी presentation।
इफ़ देर आर नो फर्दर क्वेश्चंस, आप लोग प्लीज़, एक मेरी आप लोगों से रिक्वेस्ट है कि आप लोगों को जो भी इस पर क्वेरीज हों वो डॉक्टर मुदस्सिर अब्बास को या मुझे, मेरा ईमेल एड्रेस इस पर दिया हुआ है, आप डायरेक्ट मुझे कहें। नेक्स्ट प्रेजेंटेशन इस पर आप लोगों के अकॉर्डिंगली होगी। हमारे अपने तो कुछ प्लान्स हैं जिनके अकॉर्डिंगली हमने किया हुआ है, लेकिन आप लोग जो चाहेंगे नेक्स्ट उसके अकॉर्डिंग होगी। क्योंकि बात यह है कि जो नॉलेज होता है वो शेयर करने से बढ़ता है, नॉलेज कभी भी शेयर करने से कम नहीं होता। तो मैं इसी चीज़ पे हमेशा बिलीव करता हूँ। और जब आप किसी को हेल्प करते हैं ना, तो व्हेन यू एक्सटेंड अ हेल्पिंग हैंड टू समवन, यू आर इनफैक्ट हेल्पिंग योरसेल्फ। मुझे बहुत सारी चीज़ों को पहले नहीं पता था, लोगों ने पूछा है, मैंने पढ़ा है, लोगों को बताया है, इस तरह मेरा अपना नॉलेज इंक्रीज होता है। आप लोगों को नहीं किसी बात का पता, प्लीज़ डू आस्क। मुझे नहीं पता होगा, मैं आपको पढ़ के इस पे बता दूंगा। नेक्स्ट प्रेजेंटेशन के लिए आई वुड लव टू हैव योर इनपुट इन AUPSP रिसर्च इनिशिएटिव। इस मीटिंग का लिंक वहाँ पे आ जाएगा। अगर आप लोग मजीद इस पे कोई प्रेजेंटेशन देना चाह रहे हैं या कुछ और इस पे करना चाह रहे हैं तो ये यूट्यूब पे भी इंशाल्लाह ताला वहाँ पे भी आप लोग कर सकते हैं ये प्रेजेंटेशन। एक चीज़ जो आपको मैं देना चाहूँगा वो ये कि बताना चाहूँगा वो ये कि आप लोग अपनी रिसर्च प्रोफाइल कैसे बना सकते हैं, उस पर एक अलग प्रेजेंटेशन इंशाल्लाह ताला होगी। एंड जी मुदस्सिर।
अमार भाई, मेरा ख्याल से एक जो हमारा माशाल्लाह ये पहली एक मीटिंग है, तो इसमें जो है वो एक ग्रुप फोटो अगर हो जाती, ताकि जो है वो हम अपनी ग्रुप फोटो जो है वो शेयर करते, तो मेरे ख्याल से सब अगर अपने माइक ओपन कर लें और एक फोटो हो जाए तो इट विल।
मुदस्सिर आप म्यूट हो गए हो, आप प्लीज ज़रा अनम्यूट करो।
अब सर आवाज़ आ रही है?
जी जी आ रही है।
हाँ सर, मैं ये कह रहा था कि अभी जो है वो हमारी ये पहली मीटिंग थी, तो अगर जो है वो सब अपने अपने कैमरास ओपन कर लेते तो एक ग्रुप फोटो हो जाए, अगर ये फिजिबल है तो।
कैमरा ओपन है, आप लोग प्लीज इस पे करें। थैंक यू। हमारी वैसे ये मीटिंग रिकॉर्ड हो रही है, इस पे आई एम श्योर कि बाकी लोगों ने इस पे मिस किया है। थैंक यू सो वेरी मच, आप लोगों ने ज्वाइन किया। आप लोग के साथ आई होप कि नेक्स्ट इस पे करेंगे। एनीवेज, नहीं इस पे ग्रुप फोटो पे आना चाहते इज एब्सोल्युटली फाइन, लोगों का इस पे अपना होता है। तो इसमें प्लीज एक बात याद रखिएगा कि ये जो काम स्टार्ट किया ये काम खत्म नहीं होना, ये काम दिस वर्क इज गोइंग टू लास्ट फॉर टाइम्स टू कम। हम लोग माशाल्लाह इस वक्त, अब मुझे भी नहीं पता कि मैं कितनी देर से बोल रहा हूँ, आई एम नॉट इवन श्योर कि मैं कितनी देर से आप लोगों का सिर खा रहा हूँ, और आप लोग यू आर ऑनलाइन, यू आर लिसनिंग टू मी। थैंक यू सो वेरी मच। मैं सब लोगों से कहूँगा कि जस्ट टू मेक इट कमेमोरेटिव, प्लीज मेक योर टर्न ऑन योर कैमरा। जुनेद, can you adjust your camera please? We are having a question from Dr. Baksh Ahmed. Ji, Dr. Baksh.
Sir, sir, I have the same question, that it would be better if we, sir, it would be better if we get some idea about about how to identify the problems and how to review the literature for that, so that we can be focused in our searches. So that would be good.
Dr. Baksh, first of all, thank you so much for your question. आप लोगों ने जब भी मेरे से कोई क्वेश्चन पूछता है तो मेरे से इंटरेक्ट करना मुझे बहुत अच्छा लगता है। पहली बात तो ये है कि आप लोग इस पे, मैं ये चाहूँगा कि आप लोग नेक्स्ट इस पे हमारे साथ पार्टिसिपेट करें, साथ चलें, क्योंकि आपको नहीं पता कि हमारे साथ कौन कौन से लोग हैं। हमारे पास बहुत काबिल लोग हैं। डॉक्टर वाजिदा जो इस वक्त आपको स्क्रीन पे नजर आ रही हैं, शी इज सर्टिफाइड मेडिकल ऑडिटर, शी इज इन रिसर्च मेथोडोलॉजी का जितना इन्हें पता है इतना और किसी बंदे को नहीं पता, इंक्लूडिंग माई सेल्फ। बहुत सारी चीज़ों में डॉक्टर वाजिदा जो है वो मुझे करेक्ट करती हैं, बहुत सारी चीज़ों में ये मेरी उस्ताद हैं। डॉक्टर जुनैद आपको नजर आ रहे हैं, he has done a lot of research and सारी research पे contributions हैं। डॉक्टर हसन शामी आपको नजर आ रहे हैं, इनके कमेंट से आपको अंदाजा हो जाना चाहिए कि ये किस तरह का बंदा हमारे पास मौजूद है। We have a lot of people who are here। हम लोग इंशाल्लाह मिलके चलेंगे। आपसे रिक्वेस्ट सिर्फ ये है कि आपको जो जो चीज़ चाहिए AUPSP रिसर्च इनिशिएटिव वाले ग्रुप में अपने वहाँ पे क्यूरीज आप डालते जाएं, आपकी सारी क्यूरीज को हम आंसर करेंगे। वो ग्रुप आप लोगों के लिए बना है और आप लोगों के लिए ही चलता रहेगा। उस पर आप लोग क्यूरीज डालें, सारी प्रेजेंटेशंस नेक्स्ट उस पर आएंगी। और ग्रुप फोटो वाली जहां तक बात है मुदस्सिर, वो हो चुकी है, रिकॉर्डिंग मीटिंग की हो रही है, भी थोड़ी देर में यूट्यूब पे इसका लिंक आ जाना है। आई एम थैंकफुल टू एवरीवन। अगर कोई कुछ बोलना चाहता है, मोस्ट वेलकम। अदरवाइज थैंक यू फॉर योर टाइम। आई विल बी कंक्लूडिंग दिस इन, अगर आप लोग को मुझे अगले 1 मिनट में कोई रेज हैंड ना मिला तो मैंने मीटिंग खत्म कर देनी है। थैंक यू सो मच फॉर योर टाइम। चलिए जी, आई थिंक दिस इज टाइम टू कंक्लूड द मीटिंग। आप लोगों ने बहुत टाइम निकाला है, आपको प्रेजेंटेशन और ये सारी चीज़ें यूट्यूब पे आ जाएंगी। थैंक यू सो वेरी मच। अपना बहुत सारा ख्याल रखिएगा। अल्लाह हाफिज़। अंटिल नेक्स्ट टाइम।